Welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about how to perform the Sumo Deadlift. In the Sumo Deadlift, you got a couple of different stances you can take. One would be more of a traditional sumo stance, which is very wide with the feet and the toes are tipped out. Some lifters like an extremely pointed out toe, some barely point out their toe. The thing that should remain constant is that your knee should be able to kind of point towards that toe while performing the Sumo Deadlift. The second option is a Semi-Sumo stance, which is a little bit more of a narrow stance, almost resembling a wider squat stance. That wider stance requires more mobility, so if you set your feet really wide, but you can't get your hips to open up to where your knee points towards that toe, you might have to narrow up your stance because you don't have the adequate mobility to perform the exercise correctly. If that's the case, you could try a Semi-Sumo deadlift or any other variation. You could also do a conventional style deadlift as well. Some of the pros and cons of a sumo stance versus a conventional stance is a sumo stance takes some of that pressure away from your spine or your back and pushes more of that weight through your hips and legs. This isn't necessarily a good or bad thing. Some people just really struggle to get into a conventional stance, in which case sometimes a sumo or a semi-sumo stance might be useful. Now we're going to talk about the setup of the Sumo Deadlift. So you want three things to line up: your midfoot, the barbell, and your shoulder blades. You can easily see those three things if you record yourself straight from the side of the barbell. Again, going back to your semi-sumo versus sumo stance, if you go super wide, it requires a large amount of mobility. So if you can't get your knees out wide enough like we talked about before, bring that stance in a little bit. So now that you got your feet set, go down and grab the bar. You want your shoulders to line up with where you grip the barbell. So if you grip the bar with your hands super close together, that's gonna be putting some unnecessary tension in the shoulders, which is gonna be uncomfortable for a lot of people. And if you grip really wide, you're actually wasting range of motion, and you'll probably run into your thighs more than you need to. So now that you have your setup with your feet and you're gripping the bar at shoulder width, you're going to want to engage your lats. So if you imagine like somebody tried to stick their thumb in the back side of your armpit, you're squeezing that thumb, that would be in your armpit. You should feel this muscle in your back kick on. Those are your lats. So kind of with that taller chest, squeeze that back, and you're going to be driving through the floor. A lot of people like to imagine spreading the floor with their feet, so that way their hips and their chest are rising at the same speed is the idea. If you were recording the movement from the side, you'd see that your bar path is very vertical, and that's what your deadlift should be. Your sumo deadlift should look like it has a pretty vertical bar path. So now that you're standing with the barbell, you did a deadlift. Set it down. Those are the major points of a sumo deadlift that I like to cover with clients. Get your stance figured out, get your grip figured out, and make sure that your back is locked down and you're pulling with a relatively flat back. It's okay if you experience some rounding of the upper back, but we are trying to avoid loading the low back when it is rounded. So you don't want to be pulling like a bro in the gym with a halfway broken back. Last three things that I'm going to mention. Pulling in flats, which are just shoes that don't really have much of a cushion underneath your foot, would be highly recommended. You're able to push your energy more straight down to the floor and you're not wasting your energy between your pulls. Number two is the deadlift is an exercise where you could reset between every single rep. So if you feel like you got loose on rep number 2 and you're doing a set of 4, you can let go of the barbell, stand up, and reset between your reps. That's one thing that I remind clients of frequently, is that your rep quality really does matter a lot. The third thing that I'd mention is that we do have a whole deadlift document called Mastering the Deadlift, which is going to go through some of the top mistakes. You'll find those videos on this YouTube channel as well. We'll probably throw this into a playlist as well, so you'll see that somewhere around here. In the description. We'll put it in the description. We're done with that. That's the Sumo Deadlift. I'm gonna go film some B-roll, some deadlifts, and we'll talk to you soon.